Welcome to The New Next, a podcast that addresses current events and how they will impact the future. Co-hosted by the inquisitive public speaking champion, Mike McVeigh, and energy, economics, and technology expert, Matt Jensen. Join us as we explore all things energy, economic, tech, and political, and how they will affect our future. Podcasts typically grow by word of mouth. If you know anyone who would enjoy this content, sharing this in a message or by posting on social media would mean the world to us. Thanks for listening, and let's get started.
Since we kind of touched on it a minute ago, so Russia has halted gas deliveries to Finland, Netherlands, Denmark because they're unwilling to pay in rupees.
Rubles.
And rubles. Sorry, thank you. Getting video games rupees mixed up with rubles. And this is something we've talked about, not necessarily with the Scandinavian countries, but as a whole, that Russia has kind of changed the market in regards to what kind of money they'll accept and how they will move forward. And there's countries like India, particularly the one that we've talked about the most, has said, you know what, we need the gas, we need this. So they're going ahead and changing the way they're paying.
Yeah.
But so is there anything other than principle? Is there any reason why the Scandinavian countries in particular are unwilling to pay in rubles?
It's kind of sanctions related, but the backdrop to it too, I think in like 2008 or something, Russian parliament passed a unfriendly countries law, and it basically designated countries like the US, a lot of EU countries, Canada, stuff like that, that these are kind of, are frenemies almost. They're, well, I guess they're not like we'll trade and intermingle with them, but we don't like you. And countries not on that list were, I believe, India and China, for instance. So they basically said recently that with this unfriendly countries list, it was kind of like, we're not going to work with you. You have to do what you want or what we want if you want this. And they realize kind of the effect on their economies potentially with this. Like, I think it would be different if it was November and they're about to go into winter, right? But still, this is causing ripples in energy markets. It's kind of this weird thing where Qatar is kind of being the backstop for this. Qatar is, a friendly country to these countries, even though they've got questionable, are kind of a questionable country, I would say. But for a long time, there's been a lot of people behind the scenes trying to push infrastructure, like a large pipeline from Qatar to Europe, so gas could be more efficiently moved. Like they're a very small country, but the waters right off of Qatar, it sits one of the biggest, if not the biggest, gas fields in the world. So they're small, but they're mighty in that sense.
Right.
And they're also strategically kind of positioned on that tip. But the problem is, and if you go to the kind of conspiracy theory portion here, is a lot of people have said that a big reason that we went into Syria was that Bashar al-Assad wasn't compliant with running a giant pipeline to carry Qatari gas into Europe. And, I don't personally know about that, but
I was about to ask you, does that hold true in your opinion? But I guess you dodged that question.
I don't know, but it's definitely there's kind of some cool thing or like weird things about that. And with Yemen too, Saudis talked a lot about or people behind the scenes with Saudi have talked a lot about building basically a canal that runs south through Yemen, so they can run their crude oil through tankers and bypass the Strait of Hormuz. So you essentially don't have to run it through Iranian waters at all. And through that big old thing, you can basically have your own Suez Canal that goes straight south. So there's been, people that have been like, maybe this is a reason there too.
Right.
There's a lot of money to be made in both situations if you can get gas from Qatar through Syria and through the Mediterranean, basically to Europe. And if Saudi can bypass Strait of Hormuz, you don't have to constantly patrol that. So just last week, the IRGC that basically kind of, I don't know what to call them. Like the U.S. has them designated as a terrorist group, but they're like a part of the Iranian military. They boarded, I think, 3 oil tankers with helicopters and basically took them over with weapons and confiscated them. And so like the Greece foreign minister was saying, this is piracy at its finest, basically. But you deal with a lot of that stuff. And it's the Strait of Hormuz is, you've got, so like Saudi is a Sunni country, Iran's Shiites, and there's a lot of like old-blooded, I would say, religious factions there.
Right.
So you have that factor of religion factoring into global trade of your biggest commodity, and it creates a lot of uncertainty. So like I believe Iran bombed, or Iran-backed Houthi separatists in Yemen bombed that, or shot rockets at that oil facility, that Saudi Aramco oil facility earlier this summer. And so they were having a Formula One race less than 10 miles away. And it was interesting because there's like basically a Formula One race. It's like a big international event, and you can see this oil smoke billowing over this because it had been shot with a rocket.
Right.
So it was kind of, anything goes in that area of the world, I'd say.
Yeah. That's just crazy.
So when we went back to this, like Russia has the unfriendly list of countries, and I think that they're looking. We talked previously about how the financial sanctions are working, but they're not really working in the same sense. There's a lot of downsides to the countries that are doing that, and I think this is one of it too. It's really a test to see how this works out, but with the EU ban, so the EU banned, they banned, in quotes, I'm making quotes with my fingers here, Russian imports of gas. But you look at the fine print, and it doesn't go into effect until the end of this year. So there's the possibility that the whole Ukraine war is over by then, and it's really pitched as being, well, we're going to cut off the funding to Putin's war machine. But it's really, I think a lot of these things are more playing to domestic politics than they are actual solutions, because there is no good solution. A lot of these countries have to deal with potentially crashing their economies, and in this sense too, the only thing that they're banning is Russian oil imports transferred by ship. So you're not even touching the pipelines.
Gotcha.
So it's which is 2/3 approximately of their imports, but it's really, they can't just shift off of this because they need it to run their economy. like it or not, the wind power has been pretty unreliable there. And there's been, a push, especially in Germany, to close down nuclear. Some of that's been pushed back on it, but they don't have the LNG import facilities to really pull a lot of that in. So they're kind of to replace the pipeline stuff. And then you also have the European Union, that's a collection of states. And I think Hungary especially was like, I don't think so. We're not going to crash our economy for this. We're fully reliant on it. So,
Right.
Yeah, Putin has a lot of power because he kind of can control whether or not they have the lights on. And they're a smaller country. They're, I believe, the smallest country in the G8, but they still have they're transacting probably over $1 trillion a year in hydrocarbons. So,
right. Yeah. Unfortunately, the only thing I can really respond to on most of this is when I hear unfriendly countries, I'm thinking, oh, Canada must be included as a friendly country because, they're always like, how's it going, eh?
Yeah.
And that doesn't contribute to the conversation at all, other than making me feel like, oh, Canada's such a friendly place.
I love Canada.
If you want to learn more, find us at thenewnextpodcast.com or matthewADjensen.com/podcast, where you can suggest a topic you would like us to cover. If you enjoyed what you heard, share the podcast, tell a friend about it, or rate us 5 stars. We appreciate you listening.